Something happened to me today that really tested my faith and fortitude. It was really a small thing, to be honest. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was something that shouldn't have affected me as much as it did. No one died, no one was hurt. I didn't lose a lot of money, nothing like that. But still, as I sat there, all I could really feel was anger, frustration, hurt, disappointment, and sadness. I woke up this Sunday morning pretty tired. My eyes were heavy, my shoulders were really sore. All I wanted to do, all I wanted to do was just crawl back in bed and go back to sleep and just get under the warm covers. But just the day before, I told myself that I would wake up early this Sunday morning, earlier than normal, and I would go to church. On previous Sundays, I would usually sleep in, eventually getting up in the late morning, getting ready, and, eventually heading off to church. I am new in town. Just recently moved from Boston to Atlanta, and I'm still finding my way around, getting a hang of things, finding my community. And I have found in the past that one of the best ways to build community is to be amongst a fellowship of other believers of Christ. So I was on a quest to find a new home church for myself. I had attended services at this particular church a few times over the past couple of weeks. And I was still trying to decide if it was my church, my place. The teaching there was pretty good. The worship seemed powerful. But no matter no matter how many times I went, and today I think was my fourth or fifth time going. No matter how many times I went, no matter how early I tried to get there, I found myself always seated in the overflow because the main sanctuary was full. Whether I got there 30 minutes early, 20 minutes early, 45 minutes early, the results were the same. Or I should say, the results have been the same thus far. So, at the advice of someone that I met in line last week at the church service, I decided that today I would go to an earlier service. This seemed like a great advice, great recommendation, and I was pretty sure that this was going to fix the problem. So, today, despite my tiredness, I wake up, force myself to wake up, drive to church, and I arrive about 30 minutes before this service is meant to start. I look at the line. There are people there, but it's not bad at all. In my heart, I'm like, woo! Finally, today, I am going to make it in. But what transpired over the next 30 or so minutes really just left me crushed. I know that sounds pretty dramatic, but in that moment, that was how I really felt. Gutted, Yeah, that's how I really felt. From delays with parking to various inefficiencies to one obstacle after another. By the time I arrived at the entrance of the church, it was already 5 minutes into the service, and I was told that there was no more room in the sanctuary and I would have to sit in the overflow. With a dramatically heavy heart that was full of disappointment and an underlying pit of anger, I turned around, deciding that I was not going to go to the overflow yet again. I was just going to walk back to my car and go home. On that walk, a small thought entered my head, telling me that I should look up other churches in the area. Maybe I could find a different one that I could attend instead. No. I quickly shut that down, decided that I was going to drive home, find something to do to cheer myself up, eat some food, and maybe I would tune in for a service online. I thought to myself, I'm not in the mood anymore that I would really benefit from going to church today. I'm feeling too emotionally drained. I'm just going to go home. Now, I'm sure that you are sitting there and you're listening to this and you're like, Rebecca, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? And honestly, now that I'm sitting here several hours later and I have the benefit of time, I've calmed down, my emotions aren't as heightened as they were back then. I am more clear headed, you know, and I'm able to ask myself, yeah, Rebecca, what was the big deal? So what? You know, you couldn't get in. It wasn't the end of the world. Like I said earlier, no one died. No one got hurt. It really wasn't a big deal. After the haze is all cleared and the disappointment has fallen away a bit, I am better able to reflect and to think about what really the big deal was. And sitting here on this side, I can now say that the big deal was really expectations. Funny enough, this realization comes directly from the message that I received at a different church that I ended up attending today. So, why do we fail in accomplishing the things that we set out to do? We fail because we have expectations. When we set goals for ourselves, for others, for our businesses, etc., we usually attach a set of expectations to those goals, whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously. We decide what we expect the process is going to be like, the type or amount of resources we think we're going to need, the obstacles that we're going to face, the timeline that it's going to require for us to achieve that goal. We decide or think about how people are going to react or going to think about the thing that we're trying to accomplish. We even fantasize and think about what the end result is going to be, what the product is going to turn out like. We think about what that feeling of success and accomplishment is going to be like. We tell ourselves that we're just planning ahead, we're just thinking ahead, we are organizing ourselves so that we will be better able to adapt to the things that come our way as we try to accomplish this goal. And while that is perhaps a little true, the problem with expectations is that they can quickly become a handicap. They can go from the thing that was supposed to help us be agile and flexible and quickly respond to the situations that come across our way. They instead can become the things that chain and trap us in frustration, anger, sadness, and disappointment. Because what happens when we encounter a situation that didn't go the way that we thought it was going to go, the way that we prepared for it to go? Some of us are able to just quickly brush it off and move on to a new solutions. And kudos to those of us who are able to just like brush it off and pivot to something else, to a different solution. That is wonderful. But like me, some of us will just persevere for a little bit. Some of us will just persevere for a little bit, returning to the same church over and over again, even though we know that the likelihood of us sitting in the overflow is pretty high. We keep going back. We will persevere until our expectations fail us so many times that we just finally feel crushed. Whether it happens right away or it happens slowly over time, after a few hits, our expectation basket simply just kind of like runs dry, and a lot of us just give up. And to be honest, today I chose to give up. I said, I'm driving home. I'm going to go find something to cheer myself up with. Maybe we'll pick this up next week. Who knows? Or maybe we won't. The reason why we fail is because we attach our goals to expectations that eventually blind and limit us from other opportunities or possibilities that may come our way. And sometimes those opportunities or possibilities would have either propelled us towards our goals or redirected us towards an alternative path that would have allowed us to achieve our goals in a different way or showed us a different avenue for getting to those goals. So, on my drive home, I spent a lot of time ruminating. I thought a lot about the previous times I had been to that church. I thought a bit about how frustrated I felt. I realized that an hour and a half had passed since I left my house, and I had achieved seemingly nothing in those hour and a half. I felt like my time had really been wasted, or that I had wasted my time. I just thought about this over and over again as I sat at a red light that seemed to stay red for a really long time. And then suddenly my eyes caught something to my left. And I looked over to see what it was. And there in the intersection sat a sign, like a literal sign, a physical sign, not a divine sign, but really probably was a divine sign. But a literal sign sat there in the middle of the road in the intersection, and it was a sign for a church with an arrow pointing back in the direction that I just came. And in that moment, it felt like I had a choice to make, a divinely mediated choice, perhaps, to make. I could choose to remain steadfast in that feeling of failure and continue on my way home, or I could choose to turn around, go back the way I came, and explore what this alternative possibility had in store for me. So I quickly pulled over. I, grabbed my phone, looked up the church, and saw that it was not that far away, about 5 minutes. I went on their website. I looked at their services. Their next service was starting in about 20 minutes. I quickly perused the church page and quickly ascertained that this was probably a church that I was going to like. So, changed my GPS course, turned around, and headed that way. I arrived to the church. I parked the car. I walked into the lobby. I saw that they were serving some tea and coffee, and it looked like I had time, so I grabbed some tea. I walked into the sanctuary, and someone ushered me to a seat in the front row. There's probably a message in there, but we won't explore that for today. But there's probably a message in there. You can ponder on it if you choose. I sat down, got comfortable, greeted the folks around me, and had about 4 minutes left before the service was supposed to start. Truly, what followed over the next 2 hours was an absolute gift and a blessing, with a message focused on forgiveness. The preacher talked about how the expectations that we have of people can oftentimes be the reason why we find it difficult to forgive them when they betray us. And he also reminded us that sometimes the first person that we have to forgive is ourselves. So, what's the solution? Do we simply throw our expectations in the trash? Clearly, no. I think we could have all guessed that the answer is no. We don't throw our expectations in the trash. In fact, it's impossible for us to not build up expectations in life. It may sound cliche, but we need to learn how to get out of our own way. Our expectations should guide us, but they shouldn't dictate what we do or don't do. When we hold on so tightly to our expectations, they grip just as tightly onto us, hence limiting our ability to think or see things clearly. Just because things didn't work out this time doesn't mean that they're never going to work out at all. Just because things didn't work out one way does not mean that they're never going to work out at all. Thank you so much for listening. as I reflected out loud. One of the things that helped me to process my thoughts was to sit down and write them down. I don't regularly journal, but when I do, I find that it can be a great tool not just to organize my thoughts, but to help reveal some things and bring certain things into sharp focus. This is why I often encourage my patients to keep a journal for either regular, daily, or occasional use. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking it, subscribing, and sharing it with anyone that you think might find it helpful. Also, please comment below and let me know what expectation traps you may have fallen into yourself and how you were able to get out of it, what helped you to get back on track, and share any advice for periods of failure that you found yourself in so that others may also benefit from it. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.